And thank you for our witnesses for bearing with us as we just solve those minor technical difficulties, and we will get along as quick as we can. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting number 10 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. Today we will continue our study on the National Shipbuilding Strategy. We will also discuss committee business during the last 30 minutes of the meeting. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Regarding the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our best that we can to maintain a consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether participating virtually or in person. I would like to take the opportunity to remind all participants that for this meeting, that taking pictures of your screenshots or of your screen is not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of the recommendations from public health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19th, 2021, we maintain a healthy and safe atmosphere, and the following is recommended so that we can continue to do so. Anyone with symptoms should participate by Zoom and not attend the meeting in person. Everyone must maintain 2-meter physical distancing, whether seated or standing. Everyone must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room. It is recommended in the strongest possible terms that the members wearing their mask at all times, including when seated. Non-medical masks, which provide better clarity over cloth masks, are available in the room should you require them. Everyone present must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the hand sanitizer at the room entrance. Committee rooms are cleaned before and after each meeting. And to maintain this, everyone is encouraged to clean the surfaces such as your desk, your chair, your microphone with the provided disinfectant wipes when vacating or taking a seat. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting and thank members in advance for your cooperation. I'd like to welcome our witnesses today, and Mr. Crosby and Mr. Paget are back again this week, and Vice Admiral Baines, it's good to see you, and I believe there's a Mr. Smith as well, so welcome. And I understand that you sort of have an order of presentation, and with that, I will ask the PSPC to start, and it'll be followed by D&D, followed by the Canadian Coast Guard.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Simon Page. Good morning, members of the committee. I want to thank you for inviting me to appear today before the committee to discuss the National Shipbuilding Strategy, often referred to as the NSS. More than a decade ago, the Government of Canada launched the NSS as Canada's long-term plan to renew the fleets of the Royal Canadian Navy and the Canadian Coast Guard. This strategy contributes to rebuilding our domestic marine industry and creating sustainable jobs in Canada. Since then, we have seen 5 large ships and numerous small vessels delivered to the Royal Canadian Navy and the Canadian Coast Guard. Furthermore, completion of dozens of ship repair, refit, and maintenance projects at shipyards across Canada have been carried out.
Contracts awarded under the NSS have contributed an estimated $21.2 billion to Canada's gross domestic product, for an average of nearly $2 billion annually. Over the past decade, these contracts have also created or maintained more than 18,000 jobs a year through the marine industry and its Canadian suppliers. This past year, construction and design work continued on a number of vessels. Deliveries of completed vessels included new search and rescue lifeboats to the Canadian Coast Guard and a second Arctic and offshore patrol ship for the Royal Canadian Navy. Several repair, refit, and maintenance contracts were also awarded on behalf of the Canadian Coast Guard and the Royal Canadian Navy, generating hundreds of jobs and significant economic benefits to communities across Canada. We also made progress towards selecting a third shipyard under the NSS to build icebreakers for the Canadian Coast Guard, and we hope to have more to share on this in the coming months. These are important achievements, Mr. Chair, but despite the successes, the NSS continues to face challenges. As indicated in the Auditor General's 2021 report, shipbuilding is highly complex and challenging work. La livraison des navires est...
The delivery of ships has been slower and more costly than originally anticipated. During the early years of the strategy, expertise both at the shipyards and within government was still developing, as new workforces in modernized shipyards were building entirely new classes of ships. This has led to ongoing challenges with respect to planning, management, and oversight of associated projects and activities. Canada had limited recent experience in the planning of shipbuilding projects when original delivery schedules and budgets were established more than 10 years ago. Much has changed since then, and preliminary budgets did not fully take into account refinements in build requirements and plans, inflation costs, changes in exchange rates, or labor rates and material costs, all of which have risen significantly over the last decade.
Is also facing challenges with attracting and retaining workforce, as well as developing skills and capabilities. Of course, industries around the world have experienced added challenges due to the pandemic, and Canadian shipbuilding is no exception. COVID has put immense pressure on workforces, working practices, and supply chains, and has resulted in rising costs of material as well as delays to build projects. Although we're still assessing the full impact of the pandemic on our projects, we anticipate further adjustment to project schedules and budgets will be required. Mr. Chair, these are serious problems that several industries are facing at the moment. It is true that we have made some progress since the inception of the NSS, but we know we need to apply lessons learned now so we can keep delivering in the future, especially as global challenges persist. I can tell you that the government continues to work closely with shipbuilding partners to do just that. And now that the shipyards in Canada have gained the experience required to set more realistic schedules, we are better positioned to tackle emerging challenges and manage risks. Mr. Chair, to address these challenges, we have made significant enhancements over the past number of years to how we manage the strategy. This includes strengthening risk management tools and processes so that we can make more informed decisions. We're actively working with the shipyards to address issues related to overall performance using proven tools such as earned value management and actively managing specific risk registers through a rigid governance system. As we are engaging with the marine sector to develop an HR strategy that aims to support industry in their ongoing work to recruit new workforce talent. The strategy relies on the activity involvement of the marine sector, including the large shipyards, and relies on a common understanding of the challenge to be tackled and the joint development of solutions. Mr. Chair, we know that the strategy is a decade-long initiative and ongoing enhancements will be required. Ceci conclut mes remarques. Il me ferait un grand...
That's the end of my comments. I'll be pleased to take your questions. Thank you.
Paget, and now we'll go to DND.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to appear before you to discuss the National Shipbuilding Strategy. I'm Troy Crosby, Assistant Deputy Minister Materiel at the Department of National Defense. Il est de ma responsabilité.
It is my responsibility to outfit the Canadian Armed Forces and members of the Canadian Armed Forces with operationally relevant and safe equipment and services so the Canadian Armed Forces can accomplish the missions assigned to it by the Government of Canada. Today, we are discussing the National Shipbuilding Strategy and what it means to the recapitalization and in-service support of the Royal Canadian Navy.
The strategy is planned to deliver 6 Arctic and offshore patrol ships, 2 joint support ships, and 15 Canadian surface combatants to the Royal Canadian Navy. This is an immense undertaking spanning decades of work and involving billions of taxpayers' dollars. For context, one of the projects, the Canadian surface combatants, will be designed and then built over a 30-year duration. and will be the backbone of the Navy for 4+ decades. Construction of these 15 ships is currently forecast to require some 60 million person hours of labor. La construction navale
Shipbuilding has many stakeholders. It involves interdependencies with departments such as PSPC and ICED, and is supported by a broad web of policies and authorities. Externally, it involves our prime contractors, their subcontractors, and a complex supply chain.
At PSPC, how we have made significant strides towards satisfying the objectives of the National Shipbuilding Strategy. You have also heard that there have been significant challenges faced, the global pandemic being but one of them. Specific to the shipbuilding strategy objective of satisfying the requirements of the Department of National Defense, mon collègue, le commandant de la Marine.
My colleague, the commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, has expressed satisfaction with the performance to date of the 2 Arctic and offshore patrol vessels that have been delivered. The historic passage through the Northwest Passage, while circumnavigating North America, is evidence of the capability this new ship brings to Arctic sovereignty.
5 of this class are well under construction in the Irving Shipyard in Halifax, and cut steel on the 6th ship is planned to occur later this year. The very visible construction progress on the first joint support ship in Vancouver is also most welcome. Vancouver Shipyards is planning to cut steel on the 2nd joint support ship in the coming months. There has also been significant work accomplished progressing the Canadian surface combatant design with a goal of cutting steel in the 2024 timeframe. Nous devons toutefois apporter des améliorations.
However, improvements in implementing the shipbuilding strategy are required, and investments in our collective capacity, including industry, are needed. Simply put, ships are not being built fast enough and are costing more as a result.
NSS underline the time value of money on a project of the magnitude of the Canadian surface combatant. By their calculations, 1 year of scheduled ship slippage could equate to $2.2 billion of lost buying power. At the same time, we need to keep in mind the cost and collective ability to keep our Halifax-class frigates in service and at the required operational level while bridging to deliveries of the Canadian surface combatant. La sécurité requise.
The required security in shipyards where warships are built and maintained, as well as their supply chain, limits options to where this type of work can be done. Having the domestic capability and capacity to support our existing and future fleet allows sovereign control. Events in the world today have reinforced the importance of this ability.
Strategy is crucial to national defense. Collective focus is required to continue across the various stakeholders, including industry, to bring the new fleet into service in the time that is required. And I will be pleased to take your questions. Thank you.
Monsieur Admiral, do you have anything? Are we okay?
I do have some opening remarks, if that would be okay, Mr. Chair.
Admiral.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, co-chairs, members, thank you for inviting me to talk to you this afternoon about the National Shipbuilding Strategy.
I would like to provide a brief overview of my mandate as the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy and my priorities for ensuring Canada has combat-capable maritime forces that are ready to deploy when called upon by the Government of Canada to meet the wide variety of taskings that can come our way through the spectrum of conflict. As head of the Navy, it is my responsibility to produce globally deployable maritime forces. In this role, I lead an organization that takes the required capability and combines it with trained sailors to prepare ships and submarines for Government of Canada missions, both domestically and internationally. Une caractéristique quelque peu unique de forces
A somewhat unique feature of naval forces is that they can be used for humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, naval diplomacy, deterrence, or combat, as the situation dictates.
The required sailors and ships are ready to deploy in various circumstances according to the Government of Canada demand signal, which includes responding to international crises such as support to NATO in light of the Russian aggression in Europe, operating in the Arctic in support of Canadian sovereignty, to combating the trafficking of drugs in the Caribbean, or in response to humanitarian disasters such as earthquakes or floods. However, it should be noted that I am not responsible for leading deployed operations. This falls under Vice Admiral Bob Ochterlony, Commander of the Canadian Joint Operations Command. As the Commander of the Navy, my top priority is people. Without the sailors and public servants that crew and support our fleet, we cannot be operationally effective through the spectrum of activity in which we are asked to operate. Part of focusing on people is ensuring that we have an organizational culture that meets the needs of both our people and institution. This means continuing to develop an inclusive and diverse Navy that is reflective of Canada's values and ethics and is based upon a foundation of respect. Systemic problems require systemic solutions, which is why we are working closely with the Commander of Professional Conduct and Culture to ensure that we keep culture change on the agenda and that we lean into correcting past wrongs while enabling an operationally effective Navy for the future. Tout le monde est le bienvenu.
Everyone is welcome in the RCN and should feel safe, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Our organizational culture must and will reflect the values held by Canadians.
And that which brings us together here today is fielding ships and submarines for operational employment. The Royal Canadian Navy's primary role in the National Shipbuilding Strategy is to provide the right maritime requirements to ensure that our fleet is positioned to meet the challenges of both the current and future threat environments. In this regard, the Navy team worked closely with Mr. Crosby's and ADM Materiel to set the requirements in order to meet the missions assigned to the Royal Canadian Navy by the Government of Canada. After setting this requirement, the Navy team coordinates closely with ADM Materiel and Public Services and Procurement Canada as they deliver the necessary and effective capability to meet Canada's maritime needs. C'est pourquoi la conversation d'aujourd'hui.
That is why today's conversation is of vital importance to the Royal Canadian Navy. The National Shipbuilding Strategy is the mechanism by which the future fleet will be delivered, and we must ensure it is positioned to do so in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. We'll now go to the Canadian Coast Guard.
Monsieur le Président, thank you
Mr. Chair.
for the opportunity to speak with you and the members of the committee regarding the National Shipbuilding Strategy. My name is Andy Smith, and I am the Deputy Commissioner of the Coast Guard in charge of shipbuilding and materiel. The Canadian Coast Guard's on-water missions, including aids to navigation, icebreaking, search and rescue, environmental response, fisheries conservation and protection, and ocean science, are fundamental to enabling the Canadian maritime economy, facilitating northern community resupply, supporting northern Arctic sovereignty, advancing the stewardship of our oceans, and promoting maritime safety. Pour réaliser ce mandat,
To effect this wide-ranging mandate, the Canadian Coast Guard operates 123 ships, including 26 large ships over 1,000 tons. The average age of these large ships is 40 years. And although they are safe and well-maintained, a generational and comprehensive renewal of the Canadian Coast Guard fleet is needed to ensure that we continue to be able to serve Canadians and promote Canadian interest.
plan has been in existence since 2005 and has accelerated significantly with the introduction of the National Shipbuilding Strategy. Over the last 4 years, the government has approved the renewal of the non-combatant fleet, including the construction of 30 large ships. The Canadian Coast Guard is a core member of the National Shipbuilding Strategy and is engaged in all aspects of the strategy, namely large ship construction, small ship construction for ships less than 1,000 tons, and ship repair and maintenance. Plus précisément, la garde côtière.
More specifically, the Canadian Coast Guard had either constructed or repaired contracts in every major yard in Canada over the last 6 years and is currently progressing the design or construction of 3 new classes of vessels, including the Polar Icebreaker. Subject to conclusion of the current qualification process to choose a 3rd shipyard, we anticipate having contracts for large ship design and construction in the 3 major Canadian shipyards in the Maritimes. A key element of our fleet renewal program is keeping the current fleet safe and operational until the arrival of the new ships. In this regard, we are carrying out repair and life extension work for the entire fleet.
National Shipbuilding Strategy in 2010 and the commitment of long-term government program funding, the Canadian shipbuilding industry underwent a renaissance following a fallow period. This long-term commitment resulted in the modernization of 2 major shipyards, the regeneration of the Canadian marine supply chain, and the reconstitution of the government's program and project management expertise in the shipbuilding domain. With respect to the large ship fleet renewal, the Canadian Coast Guard cut steel on its first large vessel in 2015. The first large ship and the first class of ships to be delivered under the National Shipbuilding Strategy were the offshore fisheries science vessels built at Vancouver shipyards and delivered in 2019 and 2020. These ships, with their advanced technology and laboratory capabilities, will enable fisheries science research on both coasts for decades to come. Nous avons également connu du...
We also recorded some success with our small vessel fleet regeneration, which is realized via an open competition process with smaller Canadian shipyards. The channel survey and sounding vessels delivered by Cantor Marine in St. Thomas, Ontario, and the search and rescue lifeboats being delivered by Hike Metal Products in Whitley, Ontario, and Chantier Naval Farion in Gaspé, Quebec, are testament to this success.
February 2021 report. Shipbuilding is a complex and challenging undertaking. We are pleased to have taken delivery of 3 large, well-built ships, but we acknowledge that these ships have taken longer to produce and have cost more than originally envisioned. Additionally, in the last 2 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has had an undeniable impact on the shipyards and the global supply chain, and current production schedules have been adversely impacted. Moving forward, as we continue to work with the shipyards to monitor performance and incorporate lessons learned, there is an expectation that build durations and by extension costs will come down, particularly on long series runs of ships. À titre d'exploitant de la plus grande flotte.
As the operator of the largest federal civilian fleet, the Canadian Coast Guard is heavily invested in the National Shipbuilding Strategy. The regeneration of the aging fleet is a top priority for us, and we continue working with the entire stakeholder community to achieve the goal of timely fleet renewal.
Questions.
Thank you very much. We'll now go into questions, and we will start with 6 minutes with Mr. Paul Hoos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimonies. I'm happy to note that there is consensus on the fact that we have had some serious problems with our shipbuilding in Canada over the last few years. Now, My concern is how we improve the situation, particularly how we deal with the excessive costs that are prohibitive. My first question goes to Admiral Baines, talking about the Royal Canadian Navy. Right now, now that we have a problem of deficiencies, do we think that we will be able to readapt at some point? Will our fleet get to the end of life before we receive the new ships? Is there any such concerns in the Marine?
Before you answer, could you move your mic up just a little bit higher? Thank you. That'll be much between the nose, and so the interpreters will be able to answer. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the question. The transition between the Halifax class and the Canadian Surface Combatant is one that we are going to monitor very closely. And it is our expectation that with the right amount of investment in both maintenance and capability, that the Navy will be able to have a transition plan between the Halifax class and the Canadian Surface Combatant. And how that will all shake out will depend on eventually the schedule and how that plays out and the ships themselves.
Merci.
Thank you. Second question concerning the types of ships, the type that was selected. Apparently, the one from Australia has a problem. It uses up lots of fuel. Shouldn't we have taken the frame? Because it's a lot less costly and more effective.
Mr. Chair, thank you again for the question. The process for the selection of the design went through a very rigorous and very well supervised process to ensure that the right ship was selected within a competitive process for Canada.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Page, I would like to understand why the initial contract had 5 Arctic ships that cost $450 million. The government ordered a 6th, and it doubled the cost to $800 million. And here we are hearing that we are now at $4.3 billion, and we're hearing about COVID problems and procurement problems. How can we justify $1 billion additional cost because of COVID? Is there a simple explanation to that? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for that question. To summarize the last question that was asked, I think the simple explanation is difficult to give on the face of it. There are several complexities involved in the strategy that we are trying to diligently manage, and some of these complexities were mentioned during our remarks at the beginning. We had experience and expertise. We had to seek expertise. Now we are in a better position, and we can understand the way forward, the costs, as well as the schedules. That being said, for the offshore ships in the Arctic, there was always an option for a SID one. We are very vigilant. Mr. Page, I'm sorry to interrupt, because initially the contract was $400 million per ship. A SID came in. It was more costly for various reasons, and now it got to $2.8 billion. Now it's $4.3 billion for the same contract, from a ship being produced, working well enough. So once again, taxpayers are paying. Is there no exaggeration in terms of cost being added this way during production of a ship being built? At some point, we can understand that it can be complicated before we start, but when we start a project and the amount doubles, and the same ship is going to be built for the Coastal Guard for $750 million. So how do you justify that as a government? How do you understand that the shipyards come with such bills? Are you able to justify those costs? Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. We are working with shipyards diligently on those elements. What I would say generally is that the trend was good with construction of the offshore ships in the Arctic and the Irving shipyard in Halifax. Unfortunately, at the point where we were getting close to good performance, we had the pandemic, and its impact was serious. It's not that all problems are tied to the pandemic, but it's a coincidence that did not at all favor the shipbuilding industry. So now we have new costs from the shipyards. We have new schedules. We are working together with third parties. We are studying the situation. And as you say, we are making sure that the costs are justified. We are making sure that everything remains efficient. It's not obvious, lots of challenges, but I think we are doing good work. Last question. With all we are dealing with, like the frigates and so on, is this not too big for the industry in Canada? Shouldn't we think of maybe focusing elsewhere? I know we want to keep everything here, but at some point there are lots of delays and there's a lot of work involved. Is that not a problem? Naval shipbuilding strategy. Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. That's something else. When we are managing the strategy generally, and we're keeping a close eye on that file. For as long as Canada and the planet regain the pace we had before the pandemic, we'll reassess everything. As you know, we are trying to include in the National Shipbuilding Strategy additional capacities to manage all needs. There's a major work plan. We are aware of that. We need to make adjustments depending on the operational requirements of the Coast Guard and the shipyards. It's not easy to manage, but I think we are doing good work. And at some point, we may need to come up with options that are not yet on the table. And if that's the case, we shall present them.
I will now go to Mr. Housefather for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And again, I want to thank all of you for being witnesses here today and for the great job that you do for our country. It is very much appreciated. I want to come back for just 1 second to the AOPS. Wouldn't it be true, Mr. Page, to simply say that the AOPS for the Coast Guard and those for the Navy are not exactly the same? They're different. So it's not comparing apples to apples. There are obviously cost issues related to COVID. There's cost issues related to supply chain, but they're also not the same ship.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. President, Mr. Chair. You're very right. They are not the same ships. The AOPS that the Coast Guard will receive are different. We're working on this design now, and the design has proven generated the conclusion that you have just put forward. The design are not the same. The ships will not be the same. Ultimately, for the hull, they will look the same from the hull down, but all up, they will be quite different. And I'm sure Mr. Smith could give you some details in this respect.
Thank you. I'm Mr. Smith. I don't know if you want to intervene or I can go to my next question. If you feel that you want to, please do.
I'll just pick up on it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Indeed, the ships may look the same, but they will be fundamentally different. For example, we've taken the armament off the AOPS for the Navy. We put some bridge wings on to facilitate the way we operate in ice. There's some accommodation changes. So the ships may look the same, but inside they will be different. With respect to the reference earlier that they're $750 million a copy, I think, and there was an article earlier this week that was published on that, I do think, to use your expression, it's not really a fair apples to apples comparison. They will cost more, but in fairness, look at the price of steel in the last 2 years that has skyrocketed, and the supply chain and the long lead items that were generated for the first 6 ships. A lot of those procurements were done 4 or 5 years ago. So it's not untoward to think that the costs of ships 7 and 8 would be higher than the first 6. Thank you.
Right. You know, I think we're all focused on making sure we get delivery of product, as quickly as we can to make sure the men and women of our armed forces have the best up-to-date equipment. And we also want to be cost efficient and keep costs down, but we also have to recognize that not everything is the fault of either procurement or defense. Part of it is worldwide trends, part of it is shipyards and this labor experiences they've experienced in COVID. And it's, and so it's easy to blame. I want to, make sure that I'm not blaming and I'm more trying to fact find and see where we can help. So I'm confident, Mr. Page, that you have been working very closely with the shipyards to help them mitigate the challenges they face. All three of them, I'm including Davy in this. Can you talk to us about whether it's with respect to COVID or whether it's respect to the supply chain issues, things that Public Services and Procurement Canada does to help the shipyards confront the challenges in terms of, for example, facilitating their access to steel? Talk to us about what you and your team do to help the shipyards to be more cost efficient.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. So I think at the outset, to answer this question, I would say that we have a very rigid governance systems with the shipyards, and that includes Chantier Davy in Lévis, Quebec. And this rigid system of governance enables us to cover a various array of topics that are key enablers within the shipbuilding strategy and for eventually the execution of the respective program of work in the shipyards. During this governance with the shipyards, we review where they are with respect to their labor workforce. We review where they are with respect to their supply chain challenges. We review where they are with respect to schedules and costs. We have now enabled a specific review of schedule and cost through the earned value management system. And one thing that we have done also very recently is we've taken the National Shipbuilding Strategy, human resource strategy at a different level. And we've engaged them in some specific discussion about accessing the right tools, the right programs to maybe hoping that they will be able to resolve some of the challenges that they have with their workforce. So holistically, we have very good conversation with the shipyards. We work together. There's some things that government controls, there's something that government doesn't control, but together we're having the right conversations.
Thank you. But in addition to helping review, and I understand we provide them with support in that regard, technology, intelligence, but we're also, for example, in the event they're having challenges with respect to certain materials and Government of Canada has better access to those materials, do you not make introductions? Do you not help the shipyards also access potential materials that they may not be able to otherwise get, or help them with logistics that they may need help with?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. We do that, and one way that we do that, especially with material here, is we try to plan. One real enabler is to plan the procurement of long lead items, long lead material ahead of time. We do that for all our contracts, and we see this as a key enabler moving forward to address some of the challenges that we see in the supply chain.
Thank you, Mr. Paget, and thank you, Mr. Housefather. We will now go to Ms. Vignola for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Crosby, the 15 Canadian combat ships that have been ordered from Irving, the estimate is between $56 and $60 million. The PBO is not really in agreement with this cost estimate. He has an additional $10 million in his own estimates. The delivery of the first ship has not yet been determined. When will the first combat ship be delivered to Canada?
At this point, we're forecasting the delivery of the first Canadian surface combatant in the early 2030s. To come back to the question of cost, and the situation or where we are right now with the procurement, we aren't actually on contract for the construction of any of the ships yet. Those are contracts that yet have to be negotiated and put into place. So there remains cost uncertainty there. And as you'd appreciate, when we're talking about the time scales and various economic factors that are taken into consideration, there remains uncertainty in the overall program cost for the Canadian Surface Combatant project, which includes not just the 15 ships, it includes all of the program management costs, weapons and infrastructure.
Merci, Monsieur Crosby.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Yes, about the cost. On the 8th of February 2019, the contract was granted to Irving, but on the 8th of February 2019, the Canadian government confirmed that the submission will go to the Martin team, Canada, being built for Irving. So the fact that the subcontractor is being used, is that one of the reasons for which we are not sure of the final cost, given that the Irving proposal was to gain profits and to use its expertise, but now they've sent it to someone else, and that other person definitely wants their own profit. So that may influence the cost. What do you think?
Mr. Chair, the contract structure that we have right now is, as the question suggested, Irving Shipbuilding is the prime contractor, and they have subcontracted work to Lockheed Martin for the design of the combat system, while the parent design of the Type 26, which originates in the United Kingdom, will be what we call pulled through, made part of, or the foundation of the CSC design. The mission systems will be unique to meet Canadian requirements. We work alongside ISI and their major subcontractors, Lockheed Martin and BAE, in order to find the trade-offs that are required to deliver the ships efficiently and effectively to meet the Navy's requirements.
Je pense que vous êtes à même de comprendre.
I think you will be able to understand that given that the design work was subcontracted to the Martin team, I wonder, because it's the second time that Lockheed Martin, let me repeat. Lockheed Martin is seriously being considered for aircrafts and also receives a subcontracting contract for ships that are so important for Canada. And this is an American company. Is it bound to respect the industrial and technological reinvestment plan, or to do it in another way than Irving by investing in industries in Alberta?
Mr. Chair, maybe I can answer this question as this is a process question. So for all procurements that have been mentioned here, the policy for ITBs and value position applies fully. So in the case of the aircraft contract, it applies, and in the case of the shipbuilding, it also applies. So we will have specific obligations that will be required to be met and monitored for the Canadian Surface Combatant project. It was part of the contract, and it's part of the proposal.
Merci.
Thank you. Now, with the other multipurpose ships that were contracted to Seaspan, we're talking of up to 16 multipurpose ships, but the budget has not yet been determined, and delivery of the first has not been determined. Having a partner who works in the private sector and has to make submissions to industries for their needs, I wonder how it's possible that Canada, who is a client and who knows its needs, could ask someone to make a proposal, to make a submission, and then ultimately, in spite of that, the client doesn't know what the cost will be for 16 ships. I think when we make a proposal, we include the cost, including any increases due to inflation and any contingencies. Why don't we know what those 16 ships are going to cost us? And when will we receive them? Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Regarding delivery of the first multi-purpose ships, we intend to put those ships in service towards 2028, 2029. So this is the conceptual phase of the design.
For the actual cutting steel on that ship, probably before 2025, 2026. With respect to the budgets, I would offer you the same question or the same answer that we have for some of the other projects that we have out there, like the program icebreakers and the polar icebreakers. It's not that we don't or won't make those budgets public, but until such time as we actually get into contract, to put those budgets out in the public domain would remove some of the leverage we have in terms of contract negotiation. So we look forward to making those transparent and public, and we will do so at an appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And if you have anything further to add, please, by all means, please submit it in writing if you can. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of you for your important work and for being here today. Now, one thing I keep hearing about, obviously the skyrocketing costs due to inflation, cost of materials, and labor shortages. My concern here is I just don't think we're thinking outside the box as a nation in terms of developing on federal lands, federal opportunities. We've got 18 Canadian ports, and I live in Port Alberni, where we have a port, the Port Alberni Port Authority, who's been doing incredible work and has been asking for the government to develop a dry dock program, for example. I was at the Pacific Northwest Economic Region Conference just 4 years ago, and they cited there's $3 billion annually of dry dock work that's done. And they were short at the time of dry dock space. And we look to countries like Norway, where they've developed dry dock space in small communities to build economic resiliency. And in Port Alberni, we've got this great company, Canadian Maritime Engineering, that's doing incredible work. And they're working in partnership with the port to try to get a dry dock. Now, I just want to talk about the cost of living in the markets on the West Coast. It's $1.5 million now for the average home in Vancouver, over $1 million in Victoria, and about $500,000 in Port Alberni. So the amount of wages that you have to pay somebody to make your mortgage in Vancouver is absolutely through the roof. So why are you not working collectively with Transport Canada and opening up opportunities so that we can reduce costs of shipbuilding in this country?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. We do have, as I alluded to before, a very good and rich system of governance for the National Shipbuilding Strategy and defense procurement at large. This governance includes Transport Canada, and so we can actually have discussion about such topics. The salary, or for instance, of employees versus the cost of living in the areas where we build ships is often discussed. With respect to the specific piece about Port Alberni, I'm not aware of this proposal. I don't think we are tracking this proposal, but I'd be happy to have a detailed look at it if it's stable.
Well, I'll just say this, that we've actually met with department staff at Transport Canada, and they don't even have a program for floating dry docks. So that's why Port Alberni can't even apply for it. And I think the federal government, especially when it comes to procurement, seeing skyrocketing costs, needs to examine all opportunities, especially in markets where there's the only deep sea port on the west coast of Vancouver Island in Port Alberni. But there's rural communities that have huge strength in that they're lower labor costs, skilled labor as well from other sectors that could be transferable. Now, I look at government policies. There's still that 25% tariff, for example, to build ferries outside of Canada that was in place so that we would build, we would deter people from building, companies and governments from building boats in Turkey and Poland and other places. The Conservative government of the day in 2010 removed it, and that actually helped deplete capacity of shipyards right across Canada. Is the government looking at policies like that and reinstating those policies? Because that 25% tariff generated $118 million annually that could be reinvested in building capacity. More capacity, the lower ship costs come down. That's what the PBO stated when he testified here at this committee. Do you support new types of policy that's going to support the domestic shipbuilding sector so that when bids come up, we're more competitive?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. We definitely discuss and support different policies, adjustment to current policies with the view to optimize the output of the National Shipbuilding Strategy across 3 pillars. The one specific policy piece that has been mentioned is not, however, at this time being tracked.
I hope that the government takes another look at this. And also just in terms of funding, like, BC shipyards are at an unfair plane advantage. The Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agencies got money, they're investing there. BC's lacking that. Is that something that you're looking at to create a funding mechanism in British Columbia to expand ship building capacity?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. We are not specifically looking at a funding mechanism in this regard at this time. We have multiple conversations and multiple ways to access these conversations. We are always open to look at proposal. Right now, we're very focused on what the programs of work are in the National Shipbuilding Strategy and the various variables associated with this.
Okay, I just think the state of the crisis that we're seeing right now in the skyrocketing costs, we need to expand capacity. I'm hoping that all the departments will come together and start looking at opportunities like this, because this is just, for me, it's just glaring in terms of failure of government to expand and invest. Now, this is for Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, we know Coast Guard currently right now is very short on engineers and crew just in general. And we need to commit to employees like other marine sectors. What are you doing to, or is there, have you been going to Treasury Board to make sure that the employees of the Coast Guard, who we're all grateful for, the sacrifice and risk they take, are getting compensated properly? Because, retention and attraction is a huge issue. And now we're looking at building more vessels, and we're going to need to meet those needs when they're built out. Can you speak to that?
Mr. President, or Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the question. It's an insightful question in that as we go about a fleet renewal, and fleet renewal really speaks to the building of the ships, but that needs to necessarily be accompanied with the maintenance funding to support them in the long term, the additional operating expenses, and the personnel costs as we grow the fleet. And that's very much front and center on the Coast Guard as we look to ensure that in the long term, once we take delivery of these ships, we'll be able to operate them and maintain them for decades to come.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Johns. And in looking at the times that we have and trying to make certain that we stay on time, we're going to go into our second round. We're going to change to 4 minutes, 4 minutes for the first 2, and then 2 minutes for the next 2, and then 4 minutes for the next 2. And that will work. So we're going to go with Mr. McCauley for 4 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. We're very, very short of time, so I'm going to ask you to provide some information to the committee, email it back to us to start with. I'd like to hear from all of you regarding our costs, design costs, basic design, functional design, production design for these products, our projects, especially for the icebreakers, compared to benchmarking to international standards. I'd also like to get feedback or information from you on our productivity at the 2 main shipyards versus international benchmarking, please. If you could provide that to the committee, especially productivity. Now, Mr. Smith stated costs will come down on long series ships. I want to follow up Mr. Paul House's comments. We know that as we get more and more as we build more and more specific type of ship, the productivity is supposed to increase quite dramatically, exponentially, as the crew learns more. Now, we've seen with the AOPS, despite that, the 6th added ship, the cost has gone up. And now with the Coast Guard ships going up massively, instead of being perhaps around the $200 million mark, it's going up $750. Mr. Smith has commented, well, okay, different design. Heavy costs are being taken off the AOPS, which is the weapon system. So I'd like a straightforward answer why the cost is probably tripling, not just doubling, but tripling because of the productivity and knowledge on building those ships will be so high by the time we get to 7th and 8th. Why is the cost basically tripling? I think it was South Africa or Spain had built a similar ship just this year for $170 million. And are we actually just sticking with, as Mr. Smith said, well, it's basically just the hull's the same. Have we made a mistake picking a bad design and building around it that is costing us so much money?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Maybe I'll start and then I'll ask Mr. Smith and Mr. Crosby to speak about their respective AOPS portion. So from a process point of view, as we mentioned with the AOPS program 1 through 6, we had really good momentum established with Irving Shipbuilding on the East Coast. We had the Navy accepted 1, they accepted 2, 3 was
Sir,
launched.
I'm aware of all that. Could you please, we're short of time, could you please just stick to answering the question?
Yeah, we had very good momentum building, and then the pandemic happened. We lost that momentum. We are grateful for the shipyards to have remained operational during the pandemic. It could have been worse. ISI had to shut down, and we really felt
how long did they shut down for, please?
At number 4.
Mr. Paget, how long did they shut down for, please?
They shut down for a few weeks, Mr. Chair.
A few weeks. So we're looking at an almost triple of a price because of 2 weeks lost. The reason I bring that up, I'm looking at a forensics from a company. Fincantieri shut down for a couple weeks. U.S. Navy, no major disruptions, several encouraging employees to work from home. We've heard repeatedly, excuse after excuse after excuse. Oh, it was COVID. ISI shut down for 2 weeks out of a 2-year period, and you're blaming a tripling of cost on 2 weeks. I do not find that acceptable. I don't think taxpayers find it acceptable. I don't think the men and women in our Navy find it acceptable, these continual delays, blaming it on COVID. I'd like you to provide to this committee in writing an exact breakdown of from both shipyards how many hours lost by month, please, due to COVID, because I do not believe your excuse of COVID for these massive cost overruns and delays.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. And if Mr. Pais, if you can submit that to the clerk, and he will distribute it to the committee. Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Mr. Johari for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for your testimony today. As our time is short, I'll as I call it, I cut to the chase. We know there's been increased costs. So going forward and looking forward, what measures are we putting in place to be able to track them, to progress it, to monitor, to report? So in preparation for the meeting, I was looking at the sources that I can get progress update. And I noticed that the nature of decentralized and collaborative approach that taken in the National Shipbuilding Strategy, I found there are multiple sources that reports on the progress and different project that stems from this initiative. Is there any centralized source that reports on all of these projects? And if not, can you kindly give us an update of what is the best way to be able to get a holistic and comprehensive report that talks about material costs, talks about labor costs, talks about the progress and where we are, and if there's any challenges, it highlights the flag. I think either Mr. Page or Mr. Crosby, and if Mr. Smith or Admiral Baines wants to make any comment, I'll be glad to receive that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So again, through our governance, we manage the National Shipbuilding Strategy as a strategy. So we have different measures that we look for to this level. We also manage at the program level, shipyard by shipyard. So we have specific governance with the shipyard to manage their respective programs of work. And we manage and report at the project level, so project by project, according to their specific their specific authorities and accountabilities. Their program of work from one coast to another and the challenges are not the same. So sometimes it's difficult to really have the same discussions with the same mechanism for resolve, but we do take a holistic approach at the strategy level.
Thank you. So is it fair to say that there exists a single dashboard? However, those dashboards are broken by different projects, and therefore there exists a centralized source for reporting and the progress, and we could get access to it?
So the overall NSS dashboard does not currently exist. We do monitor measures for the strategy, but those will not relate to a project-by-project view. We do have what I would call a central benchmarking or a central view of programs of work in the respective shipyard, and those are managed on a monthly basis at regular governance meetings.
Thank you. We on February 4th, we heard from Auditor General who talked about the need for strict monitoring and oversight. Now, can you clarify how your team with the shipyard and other suppliers are doing to oversee the construction and delivery of the ships through NSS to ensure that we have proper oversight on these projects?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. We do exercise rigid oversight on all our projects and programs. Since the OAG report, we have embraced all recommendations. There was a specific recommendations about managing in a more comprehensive way and meticulous way the schedules and costs and scope of the project. So we're using the earned value management tool to do this. And we've also increased the level of risk management that we exercise on the projects, the programs with the shipyard, and the strategy at large. And we have integrated risk management discussions within all levels of governance.
Thank you, Mr. Paget. We'll now go to Ms. Vignola for 2 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Canada bought 6 Arctic patrol vessels that cannot go to the Arctic in the winter. They are called icebreakers, but they are not well designed enough to be able to break ice in the winter. That was for defense. Now, for the Coastal Guard, we have 2 others with the same AOPS. That's what we're told. Purchased, will be able to patrol only during August in the fall because they are not strong enough to break ice. So how can we build icebreakers that cannot break ice? And why did not we come up with icebreakers that can do their work all year long and that will be able to provide protection throughout the year?
Your mic is off.
Pardon me. I think it needs to be understood initially that the AOP ships, pardon me, are ice capable, not icebreakers, and there's a fundamental difference there. As it relates to the Coast Guard mission set, pardon me, the 2 AOPS Coast Guard variants will have primary missions of offshore search and rescue and conservation and protection for the North Atlantic Fisheries Organization. They will have secondary missions to enable science and ice track maintenance. So for example, on Lake St. Pierre, for example, once that the ice breaking track has been made by an icebreaker, the AOP ships for the Coast Guard will be able to maintain that track.
Excusez-moi, Monsieur Smith.
Excuse me, Mr. Smith. I wasn't talking about that. I talked about the AOPS. Let me rephrase my question. What are the deadlines for the AOPS for going to the Arctic? The limitations.
there's a very well-established entry into the Arctic regime, much like the naval variants of the AOPS. The limiting date to entry into the Arctic, and it depends on where you say in the Arctic, in fairness, but I think any time past late September would be a limiting date for their entry into the Arctic.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. And if you think of anything else you can add to that answer, then by all means, I feel you need to. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you all again. Mr. Smith, I worked with Mr. Girard and Ms. Thomas when they were the previous Pacific Region Coast Guard commissioners, deputy commissioners, on the development of the Coastal Nations Coast Guard Auxiliary program. And I'm really grateful to see a couple of vessels come out just last month, actually, to serve our coast. And we know how important it is to provide resources to Indigenous peoples who are more likely to respond even before Coast Guard can in many cases. Can you provide any updates to this committee about new vessels that you're going to be adding to the Indigenous Auxiliary Fleet, and what's going on with the Pachidat? Because I know that they've been waiting anxiously for that station to be implemented, and it's critical to protecting the West Coast.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the engagement with the Indigenous populations on the West Coast, we have an active program. The Community Boats program is an active program that the Coast Guard is moving out, and that's part of the Oceans Protections Plan. Additionally, we continue to build the search and rescue lifeboats, and some of those will be deployed to the West Coast. With respect to the Pachidat, not my area per se. I'm aware that there is an initiative going forward to work with the Pachidat. Although specifics on that, I'd have to take that question on notice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there's some sense of urgency to get that project up and running, especially when it comes to the safety of our coast and make sure that those Indigenous communities have those resources. The midships that were Coast Guard had a rocking issue regarding the lack of a stabilizer. Has that been addressed, and how are you going to make sure that we don't have that issue come up again like we did a couple years back? I can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I understand your question. Are you talking about the midshore patrol vessels that we have?
Yeah, there was a huge issue, as you remember, with the ballast, and they had rocking issues that were making staff and crew sick.
Excuse me, Mr. Smith.
First of all,
unfortunately, due to time restraints, if you could provide an answer in writing to the committee on that question, it would be appreciated. Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Paul Hughes for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Paget, talking about the polar icebreakers, the contract given to Seaspan at the time was withdrawn later on in 2019 because nothing was happening. And then after that, the government tells us we'll be having 2 polar icebreakers. Do you think that was a political decision, or just a political one, or a good one?
I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Je vais répondre.
I will answer in French. The Canadian government decided to build 2 polar icebreakers. Decisions also came with that they be constructed. So PSPC received the instructions on how they could be built. Do you think that can be done, considering that 10 years ago it wasn't done, and then suddenly we are being told it's going to be done? Nothing could be done for 1, and then now we are being told 2 will be built. It sounds like a ridiculous announcement. Do we have the capacity to do that? Particularly that in Davie, there's nothing. Considering the urgency of having resources in the north, shouldn't we have sought resources outside for those icebreakers? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. We simply execute procurement processes at this time. We are doing that for the 2 polar icebreakers. There's a process that is more advanced with the shipyard in Vancouver. we are monitoring all phases associated to that project. I'm sorry, I just have 4 minutes. You've answered my question. Next question goes to Admiral Baines concerning the asterisks, which was the last decision taken by the Conservative government at the time, which I think was a good idea. It's been 7 years since we've had the asterisk. There's a 10-year contract. Do you think that the Canadian Royal Navy should go on with the purchase that had to be done after the 10-year period, considering that we don't have what was announced already?
Thank you for the question. Asterix has been incredibly useful to the Navy during the period of the contract, which is 5 years, which we're in right now. She's allowed our sailors to maintain the very important skills they need to do replenishment at sea, and she's also had a major role in fueling our ships from a training perspective and while doing deterrence operations around the world. And so I would say to you that that capability has been an excellent addition to the RCN while we transition and look forward to the joint support ships in the future. Thank you.
Do you think at the end of the contract we are going to keep it? Will the Royal Canadian Navy want to keep the asterisks?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. This will be entirely a government decision based on the capability that it wants the Royal Canadian Navy to have going forward. Thank you.
I'm surprised I still have some time left. Surprised. 30 seconds. The submarines. We know the state of our submarines. Should we think about purchasing submarines as quickly as possible to establish our sovereignty?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'm very pleased to be able to report that we've stood up a Canadian Patrol submarine project to replace our Victoria-class submarines. And so we're very much looking forward to that process, identifying the requirements that Canada needs for the future, and then proceeding very rapidly to find a replacement for the Victoria-class. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Baines. We'll now go to our third and final round. Sorry, I apologize. Mr. Kazmierczak, I totally forgot. I apologize, Mr. Kazmierczak. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No harm, no foul. I wanted to focus my first question on the relationship between the NSS and economic development and jobs. And I was delighted to hear Mr. Smith talk about Hike Metal, which is a shipbuilder in Wheatley, which is just outside, not far from Windsor. And they had a contract close to $80 million to build 10 search and rescue ships. And this had a huge impact on that community. And the president of that company, Mr. Ingram, was quoted as saying that it had an immediate impact on an industry that was dying in Canada. That was his words, and that it really helped revive sort of the market for small and mid-sized shipbuilders and communities. That contract basically not only supported or helped support the existing 25 employees, but it also created 10 new jobs in that community of Wheatley. So I wanted just to ask if you can talk about how has the NSS contributed to Canada's economy? How has it impacted jobs across the country?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Maybe I'll start, although this is probably a better question for ISED with respect to numbers and specific figures. There were some figures mentioned in opening remarks. I mentioned, for instance, that since NSS started, there's been over $20 billion of benefits to Canada's gross domestic product, and over 18,000 jobs created across the 3 pillars of NSS. We definitely have figures that are more specific, that cover every province. Every province has seen and been impacted by the influence of NSS. specific companies. Sometimes we talk about the large shipyards, and we're very well aware of the work that they do. But the example that you mentioned is one of many examples of smaller shipyards, smaller communities across the country being positively impacted by the work that the National Shipbuilding Strategy generates, again, across the three pillars. Sometimes we tend to forget the sustainment and refit pillars, which impacts many shipyards across the nation. Thank you.
And I appreciate that answer. And, oftentimes when we talk about economic benefits, we tend to focus on the shipyards themselves and the communities that they're located in, including the three strategic shipyards. But we can also talk about downstream impacts as well too. And here I'm thinking of the land-based testing facilities, let's say at Shearwater, Nova Scotia, and elsewhere. Is that correct? That really we have to, when we're looking at economic benefits, we have to look at even downstream and look beyond just where the shipyards are located themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. That is very accurate. We need to look downstreams. We need to look deeper in the supply chain. So beyond the shipyards, large and small, there are very rich and active supply chains that contribute to the National Shipbuilding Strategy and the construction of vessels. This includes the example that you mentioned, infrastructure. Many of the projects that are on the way now come with specific infrastructure requirement, and those infrastructure requirements will also generate their own benefits through their own supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kazmierczak. And now we will go to our third and final round, and we will go to Mr. McCauley. And if you want to go a little bit shorter than the 4 minutes, by all means do.
That's going to happen. Gentlemen, quickly, would you be able to provide us a breakdown, perhaps PSPC and Mr. Smith, breakdown of what the cost savings are going to be for the 7th and 8th version of the AOPS from removing all the military hardware? So a separate breakdown for that, and a separate breakdown for the added costs for what it's going to be to adjust it to a Coast Guard design, please. If you could provide that to the committee later, that'd be wonderful. Mr. Smith, you were commenting, then we got you cut off about the operability of the AOPS and the future Coast Guard version of the AOPS in the Arctic. It sounded like you were saying after September, the Arctic would be closed to operating up there. Could you fill us in a bit better on that, please? Like what date range it can operate fully up there?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, when I say limited to the Arctic, that's specifically and only with respect to the two AOPS ships. The Coast Guard will continue to have icebreakers who will...
to the AOPS, so the AOPS and the ones that you're going to receive.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having said that, we haven't even taken delivery of them yet, and that won't happen until 2026. But it is envisioned that we would be operating in the low Arctic, because the ships will, notwithstanding that they have proven their ability to transit the Northwest Passage, from a Coast Guard mission accomplishment perspective, we would see them operating in the low Arctic. And between when ice in the low Arctic, between the dates when the ice is out, say in late April until late September.
After September, we can't even operate in the low Arctic. Is that correct?
Yes, we can operate in the low Arctic until September, bearing in mind that the primary...
So after September, we can't generally operate in low Arctic. Till what? Till around April again.
With these ships, bearing in mind, though, that the primary missions of these ships is for
about the
offshore
mission.
search.
I'm just asking specifically when they can operate. That's wonderful. I want to get back to, or go over to the T-26 quickly. England has reduced its original order down to 8, perhaps even more. The Aussies, we've seen they have problems with the weight and other issues with the design. I'm wondering what level of confidence that we have in are going forward with the T-26 design, knowing that England has said they're too expensive to fill their original order, Australia is having issues, and there have been reported issues, though I think we're getting sued over it, that the original T-26 design cannot achieve the original speed set out in the RFP, as well as crew compartment issues. Is that an issue to the Navy, seeing that our brethren in England and Australia are having these issues?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the question. We are obviously very closely monitoring the situation in the United Kingdom and in Australia through our Global Combat Ship User Group, where we're doing our very best to take advantage of the lessons learned in those programs to make sure.
Have we learned from the UK and the Aussie so far then?
Yes, as they are developing and designing their ships, we're learning from their experience and pulling through those lessons through the Global Combat Ship User Group.
Would you comment on the well-bandied about issue of overweight for the T-26 and the fact it will not perhaps be able to achieve the speed as set out in the original requirements?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We are, of course, watching the weight of the ship very closely. We should all appreciate that we're still in the design process, which means that as the original Type 26 design is being built and they have more certainty around the weight that's required for that ship, and we pull that weight through to our design, that we're able to manage that. And because we're still in the design process, we're also still looking at ways to mitigate any sort of weight change and through life weight that the ship might require. And then as we go through these design processes, we'll be able to model what the effect will be on speed. And then after we've built the first one, actually see for real what that actually means. But it is something that we're watching very closely.
Thank you, Admiral. We'll now go to Mr. Duguid for 4 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses today, as well as to the members of the committee. I've learned a lot about the NSS, a lot more than I knew before I came on the screen today. But my questions are about the North. I'm new to the committee, so I hope these are relevant. But things are changing very rapidly in our North. Canada's warming at 2 times the rate of other countries around the world. The Arctic 3 times. We know that we're going to have open ice in the Arctic. Ice-free Arctic conditions sometime within the next 20 years. Also, the sovereignty situation is changing as we speak with the war in Ukraine, and we know Russian submarines are scouting around in our Arctic without permission. I just wonder if there is, given these this situation that I've just described, is there a need to reevaluate our national shipbuilding strategy? Are we able to pivot? I know that there's long periods between approval of a project and delivery, but are we being flexible? Are we reevaluating our needs? And maybe, Mr. Chair, I'll just get both of my questions out and then back to you. But I'm wondering if we have formal community benefit agreements. I know that is government policy through a private member's bill that went through Parliament, I think 2019. If someone has a comment on that, because I think a number of our members are very favorable towards those benefits really accruing to not only where the shipbuilding happens, but to some of those ancillary contracts that benefit smaller communities. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Maybe I'll address it at a very high level. The national shipbuilding strategy at the current moment is significantly and focus on the operational requirements as articulated by the Canadian Coast Guard and the Royal Canadian Navy. We have projects and implementations in the 2 large shipyards. So we're working very hard with both shipyards to make sure that these remain on pace. To your question and your point about flexibility and We are also looking at increasing the capacity of the national shipbuilding strategy through the effort of accepting a third strategic partner into the strategy for large ship construction. We compete competitively other needs and requirements across the national shipbuilding enterprise. And with respect to your point about formal community benefits, we do have programs with the two large shipyards for some benefits as part of their value proposition, as part of the NSS value propositions, and we monitor those with the shipyards. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Page. We'll now go to Ms. Vignola for 2 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. Baines, we talked a bit about the Asterix a while ago. When the Asterix was ordered, there was the possibility of ordering the Obelix. I'm not talking about bringing the entire Wales village, but considering the deadlines we've been experiencing for the past few years when it comes to delivery of vessels, if we were to ask for an ordering of the Obelix as a supply vessel, is that a good idea?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the question. The Navy has made plans to be able to deal with the transition between the Asterix and the Joint Support Ship in a way that sees us continuing to work with the Asterix, but also working very closely with our allies.
Donc brièvement, ce que j'entends, c'est que
what I'm hearing is that for now, in your plan, you don't need a second supply vessel.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I would articulate that we do need to have this capability filled through the National Shipbuilding Strategy. And while we wait for those joint support ships to come, we've made plans to use the Asterix and work closely with our allies to make sure we have the appropriate capability for the missions we're tasked on.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Page. How many years did Seaspan and Irving had to be able to respect international requirements when it comes to shipyards? Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. We don't have a fixed number of years. It's a number that is managed with others. We manage the plans depending on what is happening at the shipyards, and we look at the various variables. So they have not yet met international standards.
Mr. Johns for 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. Thank you all again for the important work you're doing. I seem to be surrounded by end-of-life vessels in my riding. Union Bay is, Union Bay fiasco with shipbreaking happening in my riding, and there's clearly a lack of regulations in Canada to deal with shipbreaking and the end of life and divestation of disposing of vessels. And, I just think about the Sir Laurier II that was in Union Bay. In my riding, it was listing, and we actually had to fight tooth and nail to get the government to remove it instead of it sinking, because we know that, and it was a former federal vessel that was sold to the private sector and went down the line, and it was going to sink, basically. But we know that that right now there isn't really good regulations in place, and it's better to obviously break them apart on land than let them sink because of the leaching and the environmental impact. 70% of vessels right now end up in Bangladesh, and where they have very, very low environmental and labor standards. And I want to know what the government's plan is in terms of, are you going to improve regulations and adhere to the Basel Convention, which we're a signatory to, or upheld, even take it to the next level, which we should, like the EU ship recycling regulations, which are very strong, much better than Hong Kong, and we should be there as a leader. And investing in national capacity when it comes to shipbreaking as well, and ensuring we have dry dock space, which you've heard me talk about many times now. Can you respond to that? And what is the responsibility you're going to take in these vessels as they retire?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So with respect to disposal efforts, the life cycle management of assets is effected by the client departments, the Canadian Coast Guard and the Royal Canadian Navy. When they articulate the requirements for a specific disposal effort, these disposal effort will be competed across normal processes through the enterprise. In recent years, we have executed in Canada very specific with success disposal projects. And when we do so, we follow all the environmental rules and associated rules that would be part of disposal efforts. With respect to the question about dry docking, we have a comprehensive infrastructure study on the way now across the NSS that will look at dry docking and really a complete picture of infrastructure versus asset for dry docking and shipbuilding and ship repair and ship maintenance over time.
Thank you, Mr. Page. And if you do have anything further that you think you can add to those questions, by all means, please submit that in writing. We'll now go to Mr. Paul Hoos for 4 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the Russian-Ukraine war now, NATO countries will be asked to increase their military expenses. I've always agreed with that, but what concerns me now is not the waste, because just with our own projects, with the additional costs required all the time, which are incomprehensible in terms of billions, increasing defense budgets, if the government were to say we are going to get to the 2.5 of GDP, are we going to have a higher return on our investment? My other question, with shipbuilding now, are you able to take more? Because I understand that we are not even able to realize what we need to do. So if the budget were to increase, are we in a position to do better or more? Mr. Crosby from Defense. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Maybe I may start before I give Mr. Crosby the floor. We are working hard looking at the capacities of our shipbuilding industries depending on our operational needs in the Marine and Coastal Guard. And that's why we are working hard on the third shipyard. We are also looking into how small shipyards could help on a permanent basis. Now, with regard to the specific question of the budget, I'll give the floor to Mr. Crosby, my colleague.
General sense for defense procurement, should the opportunity arise, we would turn to the services who are the sponsors of the requirements. Once those requirements are determined, we know where the investments need to be made to meet future requirement. Then we would proceed with processes, competition generally, and take the best advantage of the market that we could.
Merci.
Thank you. I'll give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Macaulay.
Thank you. Vice Admiral, I just want to get back to the T-26. Won't it be a bit too late if we find it does not meet requirements after the first one is built, as you seem to be suggesting?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I would actually just clarify to say that we're still in the design process, and through that design process, we try to find trade-offs that will reduce weight and meet the speed parameters that are listed in our requirement.
My understanding is all during the design process, the ship's getting heavy, the LSW is getting heavier and heavier, so we're not finding any reductions every step, and I've been doing this for 6 years on the committee, and the ship's getting heavier and heavier every time. So, like, what do we reach a point where we say, no, we can't achieve the speed that's required, and then we cancel the T-26? Because it will reach that point where it cannot get any more speed out of that basic design.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Again, as we're still in the design process, we're still making sure that we understand the through life weight of the ship. And once we're through all of that design, we'll have to decide whether there's trade-offs that have to be made to make sure that the ship can meet the speed that we'll need for the future threats.
is there a risk that this is going to happen? Like, what trade-offs are we going to make to stick to what I think has been a very politically motivated, poorly chosen ship design?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the question. As we pull through the design from the Type 26, we go through our own design review process to look at the equipment that is put in the ship and also the through life weight that the ship has to have, understanding that it starts at a weight and then there's margins that we have that exist through life of the ship. And we can actually look at how we manage those margins through time to make sure that we maintain the right requirement for the Navy going forward.
Thank you, Admiral Baines. We will now go to Mr. Baines for the final 4 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to our guests, and thank you all for your service to Canada. My question's coming from Richmond, British Columbia, and like one of our other members, the marine sector in British Columbia is very important to us, and asserting the Canada's territorial sovereignty is crucial given Russia's actions in Ukraine. The multi-purpose vessels and the polar icebreaker that are to be built in Seaspan's Vancouver shipyards. My question is to Monsieur Page. Can you update the committee on the progress of the design work, and also, if you could, expand on the impacts, the supply chain, steel costs, and some of those things that are affecting the progress as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So with respect to the multi-purpose vessels and the polar icebreaker, we are in what I characterize as the definition phase of the project, so the design phase of the project. So we're still in conversations about efforts that are required ahead of actually pure shipbuilding efforts. So for instance, right now with the polar icebreaker, we are very focused on negotiating the contract for construction, engineering, and long lead items, and eventually getting that contract and the full design on the way. And we have some cut steel dates in the future with a focus to meet the operational imperatives of the Canadian Coast Guard. With respect to your question about commodity pricing, it's as discussed before, as mentioned before, it is something that we monitor closely with the shipyards. Our efforts on long lead items and maybe ensuring that we can order in large quantities ahead of projects is something that we discuss on a continuous fashion with the shipyards in order to generate some economies of scale ahead of the shipbuilding efforts themselves. Thank you.
Okay, and the global impacts on the supply chains and all that, ultimately, how much did that affect the costs in the progress?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. It's very difficult to put a number on how much, even in a percentage way. It has impacted. Supply chains have been impacted by what's happening globally, including the transportation segment of the supply chain management. At this time, it's just difficult to put a precise figure on that answer.
But that it has negatively impacted the progress. Yes or no?
Supply chains issue have negatively impact projects across the NSS.
Okay, and moving forward, what safeguards are built into the shipbuilding contracts to encourage shipyards to deliver ships as close to on time and on budget as possible?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So we have different contracts for different projects. One contract mechanism that we use at the moment with Vancouver Shipyard is what we call a CRIF model. So it's a cost reimbursable incentive fee model. So there are specific incentives associated with meeting deadlines and staying within costing envelopes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paget. And with that, we've come to the end of the questioning. And I would like to thank the officials for being here today. For Mr. Paget, Mr. Crosby, Mr. Smith, and Vice Admiral Baines, thank you very much for your attendance. With that said, we're now ending the public portion of our meeting, and we are going to go in camera. So as you're aware, this meeting will have to close, and the technicians will shut down this Zoom, and then you will have to come back in on a new Zoom with the new passcode. I ask you to do that as quickly as possible so that we can be expeditious and respectful of the time. So with that, I now declare the meeting suspended.